So this is what we're going to be working on in this exercise. It's a nice, quick and easy one, but I will show you a few new tricks that you haven't learned about the graph editor and such. But the aim of this exercise is to get the ball to travel in a circle using our graph editor and our 3D viewport. And we've got 5 keyframes going on. We've got one at the top here, one at the right, one at the bottom, one on the left, and then our last one is in the same spot here. We're also going to set up a cycle modifier so we can actually loop this animation 5 times and then render it out with our motion paths attached. All right, let's get started. Alrighty, so we are ready to do some animation on this ball here. We're going to make it go in a circle, as you already know. We're going to do this with 5 keyframes. So our first keyframe is going to be up here, then our second keyframe is going to be over here, third one down here, and then the fourth one here. And it doesn't matter which direction that you're going to go, but I'm going to go in the clockwise direction, so in this fashion. And I'm going to start out rough, so these positions here are going to be rough, and then I'm going to show you a couple of different ways that we can tidy them up. So that's what I'm going to do. Let me just clear my annotation. So there we go, clear. And I'm ready to start animating our sphere. So let's turn on our auto keying. As I said, I'm going to turn on my keying set. I'm going to switch it over to location. Then I'm going to turn on this, which forces the auto keying to use the keying set. And then I'm going to enable my auto keying there. And if I jump back, you'll see I've got no keyframes at the moment, but I'm just going to hit I. So I've got keyframes on all channels. Now I actually don't want to use all 3. I actually want to use 2, which is the X and the Z. So the X is the left and the right, and the Z is the up and the down. I don't actually want to use the forward and the backward for this exercise. So I'm going to get you guys, as well as me, to delete it. Now we've already learned there's a couple of ways that we can do that. We can right click and then clear single keyframe. But because I want you to practice with the graph editor, I want you to do it down here. So we're going to select our Y channel here and then hit the X key or the delete key and delete it. Now that didn't update unless I hovered over it. You can see we've got no animation on our Y channel anymore. Let's jump back to the camera. And before we set any more keyframes, I'm going to now change my keying set from location to available. Now that might seem like a little bit of a crazy and backwards way of doing it, but when you're dealing with a lot of different channels for different controls, it's actually a lot faster just to key all of them, say location, rotation, scale, and then delete the ones that you don't want, and then switch to available. So you only got those channels that you're actually working on. It might seem counterintuitive, but trust me, it does work. All right, let's actually start animating this. As I said, I'm going to start really rough. So I'm going to go up here around the 2 mark. I don't need to be precise. And obviously I started on frame 1. So I'm going to go, let's go 10 frames later. So let's go over here, and I'm going to get my ball over here, roughly about 2, yeah, that's close enough. Let's go 10 frames later. Then we're going to put it down here. That's close. I was looking at these channels as I'm animating. And then we go over here, 10 frames later to frame 31. Cool. And now the last one, because I want you to practice everything, I'm not actually going to click on frame 41. I'm going to make you do it in here. So frame 41. Practice all the different ways is kind of what I'm saying here. So there we go. We've got a little bit of an animation. If I end my animation 1 frame earlier, it's going to loop. So I'm going to go to frame 40 and then hit Control End, and now play my animation with Shift Spacebar or just Spacebar for you. Now you notice there's quite a little bit of wonkiness going on, and we're going to fix that. Now one of the handy tools in Blender is to actually be able to see where our ball is going to be on every frame through the motion paths. Now the motion paths for an object, which is different to the armature, is down here in the Object tab, and then we've got the Motion Paths tab down here. And I'm just going to click Calculate. Actually, we've got our start frame and our end frame and our step. So that should be fine for the default. So starting at 100 and ending on frame 100, but we're only going up to frame 41. So that's fine. I'm going to click Calculate and then make sure I hit OK. And you'll see my motion paths here. And you'll notice that what's actually happening is it's not actually going in a full circle, but we are going to fix that. So let's just make our graph editor just a little bit bigger so we can actually see what we're doing. I'm just zooming around now. And I'm going to start to tidy everything up. So back on frame 1, our first keyframe there, I actually want this X channel to be 0. So it's actually not quite 0. It looked like it was 0, but it actually wasn't. Now this one I want it to be on 2 because that's going to be a nice round number. Then I'm going to jump to the next keyframe with the up arrow. and fix this one. This one is meant to be on the x-axis, that is +2, and then on the z-axis, I want this one to be 0, so it's nice and aligned with the center there. Then I'm going to go to the next keyframe, tidy it up. So this is -2, so -2, and the x should be 0. That's another way of doing it. And jump to the next frame, same thing, -2 on the x, and this one's going to be 0. And then we go to frame 40, and because I want this to be the same as the first one, there's a couple of different ways that we can do that. I want to show you a new way. So on our channels here in our graph editor, I want to show you the extrapolation mode, and rather than say something like constant or linear, they're going to choose make cyclic. And what that's going to do is it's going to cycle our animation and make our first key and our last key sync up, and it'll make them match. Although it didn't do anything because I've made a mistake and I didn't have our channels selected over here. So I just shift selected those ones. Now let's try it again. So let's go up to extrapolation mode, make cyclic, and you'll see here is my cycle animation, and it's actually not quite right. So let's fix this one. So what did I actually forget? Oh, it only actually adds the cycle modifier. It doesn't change any of the keyframes that I've got. So I haven't actually changed the start keyframe yet. So let's get those right values in there. It should be 2 and then 0. There we go. These are back in sync. So I've just zoomed out there, and now let's play our animation, and you'll see something still doesn't quite look right. What's wrong with our motion paths? Now, with the motion paths, it doesn't automatically update, and this is one of the things that I dislike about the motion paths. You always have to hit this button to fix it, and now you can see it's actually, oh, there we go, we've got our perfect circle going on. So one of the quirks with this, if we go to a different frame number and then adjust it inside our viewport, it will actually update. But if we update in the graph editor, it's not going to automatically update. We have to push the button every time. So that's just one of the quirks with the motion paths. Now it's like that just to save a lot of memory, because if I had to do that calculation every time, it would slow down your computer. So let's just fix this. So this should be 2, I think, and this should be 0. So there we go. And when you change the channels here, it's the same as changing it in our graph editor. It's not actually updating because we didn't really do it in the 3D viewport. We actually did it in our channel boxes. So let's update, and you'll see, ta-da, we've got our perfect circle going on again. Let's just play this. That's looking pretty good. All right, so there's one more thing I want to do before we call this one finished, and I actually want to change the length of our animation here. So both the timing and how many times it actually loops. Now, so in our timeline, I'm going to select everything, and then I want to add some extra frames in between our keyframes here. And the way that I like to do that, I mean, we could scale it, but then it doesn't quite work, because if you pay close attention to these keyframes, they're not all jumping at the same rate, and that's going to mess up all your animation there. So what I like to do is use the shrink and the extend function, which is really, really handy. So with the mouse on this side, I have everything selected. I'm going to hit E, and then I'm going to drag, and I'm paying attention to this delta number. And when it says 5, then I'm going to confirm with my left mouse button. So I've just added 5 frames between this keyframe and this keyframe. So I'm just going to do that between each one of these spaces. But you might be thinking, that was really, really cumbersome to do, Wayne. That took a while, and it takes a lot of precision, but we can actually do it with the keyboard. So with my mouse on the right, I'm going to hit E, and then I'm going to hit 5 and enter. Then I'm going to move my playhead again, E5, enter, and then here, E5, enter. So now you'll see I've got an even number of spacing in between all of our keyframes here, although we still need to change the end of our animation. So let's change it here. I'm only going to cycle once for now, but we'll fix it in a moment. So let's zoom out and play this animation. You can probably tell it's going slower because we added extra time to it. So there we go. This is what we generally want to do for this animation exercise. Although if you're watching here, you can see something weird happening with our motion paths, and that is because we've changed it. Even though the path hasn't changed, it hasn't updated all our frames. So let's just click it one more time, and you'll see these numbers and the positions are now accurate with what's actually happening. Okay, so there we go. We've got a nice smooth animation which cycles. Now I'm going to end my cycle. I'm going to make it loop 5 times and then render it out. So we can actually count if we want. So that's just 1 cycle, 2 cycles, 3, 4, 5, so we can end it there. That's a very cumbersome way of doing it. We can actually do some mathematical operations in our boxes here. So because I wanted to loop 5 times and we start on frame 1, I can actually just multiply this by 5. So I'm going to go 60 times 5 and then hit enter, and now it's going to end on frame 300, which would have been the same as if I did that manually. So now let's cycle this. So there we go, it's looping seamlessly 5 times. And you notice it is also ending 1 frame before the top of our cycle here. So there we go, that was a nice, fun, easy animation. Hopefully you learnt a few new tricks along the way. I'm going to render it out now with our motion paths just so we can see what's going on. So you already know how to do that. So we're going to go here, let's go looping ball. I'm going to make sure, whoops, that it is an MP4. Let's change it to FFmpeg, and our encoding, well actually our preset is going to be that one. So now, rather than actually render, we can't render our animation because it won't have our overlays on here. We're going to do the viewport render. So viewport render animation. There we go, nice and fast. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We are done. Let's bring this up with Control F11.